Okay, We Live in Time is a very unusual film starring Florence Pugh, I believe that's how you pronounce her last name, and Andrew Garfield. And in the film, it's about them as a couple, and it is done in non-linear order. And here's the thing. When I first started watching this film, I was doing something else at the time, and I had a hard time following the plot. And then I realized that was the conceit of this film, was that the events in the film were in complete non-linear order. Now, I'm going to just discuss this before I get into the film, because I think I have discussed this on several of my 10-minute rants before. If you're doing a story that takes place in non-linear order, those are very difficult to write, because you have to have a really good reason for not doing this in a non-linear order. I mean, otherwise, their human mind is a sort of, put there to, it will follow a story chronologically. Like if I told you hey, what happened? And I said well, first I went to the store, and then I went to four other stores later I went there. But in the third store, I saw this, and then I kind of think okay, you really need to tell this story a bit better. So, of course, when you write screenplays, you have the opportunity to do several drafts. And I've seen movies that tell their stories in a non-linear order, and the worst is what I've called the big event beginning, where essentially you start off with something and then you hear a narrator say I bet you're wondering how I got here, or it wasn't always this way, something like that. Those are terrible. Those feel like those are 11th hour decisions just made by simply editing one thing and putting them here. And I don't know, I felt like you could watch this movie in some kind of chronological order and you could edit it in that order. And maybe that, I don't know if you would have the same experience. That is the issue. Because if I showed it to you in chronological order first, and then I tried to mix up everything, you would probably go well, I guess I'm experiencing this thing. So yeah, that was the whole thing. It's so non-chronological. I actually, it does sort of engage the viewer though. That's what's a good thing, because you're looking for things. You start going okay, this must have taken place later, but what happened in between? And then you get to the scene where you suddenly realize, oh, this must have been at this point in time. Now, this event that I saw that takes place in their future actually makes a little bit more sense and gives it some context. It's really difficult to do that without examples, but maybe I should just get to this film, because I think I've done my rant about showing a film in chronological order or non-linear. I think that this actually works for me, because like I said, I started watching this film and I just couldn't really get it, because it was kind of why is this happening? Why is this happening? And it's did I miss something? And it's and so I said you know what? I'm just gonna watch this film, just sit and watch it, because after all, I have to admit, a lot of these movies or shows that I do 10-minute rants on, oftentimes I'm doing something else. But there's enough of me to watch it, so I go well, here's my basic thoughts about this stuff. So when it comes to this film, I did just sit down and watch it, and I kind of broke it up over 2 days. And you know what? Considering this film's non-linear and just kind of shows and things just show up, yeah. Okay, so I'm probably going to get into some heavy spoilers on this story, because honestly, I think the story kind of spoils itself probably from the get-go, and once you realize what direction the story is going, you kind of realize how the film is going to end, even though it kind of jumps back and forth through time. So, like I said, Andrew Garfield and Florence Pugh, they are lovers in this thing. And basically, now there was a confusing bit at the beginning, because Andrew Garfield is about to get a divorce, and when I saw this, I kind of oh, he must be divorcing Florence Pugh. Things must have gone bad for them. And then I sort of realized, oh wait, that was a completely different marriage altogether, and I don't even think they ever show his first wife, really, in this film. I could be wrong about this, but yeah, it's kind of he's signing divorce papers, and I think what happens is he can't find something to write with, so he goes to a local shop, And when he does, he gets hit by a car. And the person who hit him is Florence Pugh's character. And when they meet, they start falling in love. And what's interesting about this film is there are many times in this film where everything feels like an absolute perfect romance between them. But sometimes they get into arguments. They get into spats where essentially, like, I can tell what Andrew Garfield's character wants in this particular relationship. And Andrew Garfield's character always carries around this notebook or a smartphone. He's always very organized. You can tell he's like a really efficient businessman. And we don't really see that of him much in his work. However, Florence Pugh's character is a chef. I believe she owns a restaurant, and then she gets cancer. Now, I believe this was done in such a way in the film where I was actually very confused, because I believe she gets cancer twice. One of them is before her pregnancy. She gets ovarian cancer, and she gets treatment, and then she goes through remission. And then she actually has a daughter of her own, and then there's a second time where essentially it comes back, and now they have to decide how they want to spend the rest of their time together, because I think they sort of know that it's not going to last very long. And there's a lot of really touching moments in this film. I will have to say, this is one of those films that is very sad. This is the modern day love story, okay? And by love story, I'm referring to that film, Love Story, which I don't think I've ever seen, honestly. But not only is this the main character, or one of the main characters, Florence Pugh's character, she knows that she doesn't have much time left, and she's a great chef, and she wants to enter this this contest. I think it's called the Bouche d'Or. I think that translates to Golden Mouth, if I'm not mistaken on the French. And I've never heard of that. Maybe that's a real thing. Who knows? It appears to be some huge cooking contest. And I think that's what's interesting, I think, is she sort of puts off doing cancer treatments just so she can go to this thing, or at least like, she should be recovering for her cancer because she doesn't really have a lot of time left. But instead she goes through with this contest. Now, at the end, I was a little confused. I don't really know if I don't think she wins the contest, but I think it's enough that she gets there. And I think that's, because honestly, I think if she won the contest, I think I probably would have went like, yeah, I'm not really believing that, but I mean, I would have thought that, it's just so Hollywood that she just overcomes all these and becomes the winner. I feel like we've seen that. That's a Rocky story or something like that. We don't need to see this. This isn't a Rocky story. But it is a Rocky story as far as like what the perils that these guys go to. And they feel like, and it feels very real. These characters do get into arguments that feel like they're out of a marriage here. And I actually don't think that these characters are married in this thing. I actually think they wanted a formal wedding, but I think there's a very sad part where they realize that, hey, they're probably not going to have enough time for them to even have that formal wedding ceremony. But it's still great to see them have so much devotion for each other. And they have a kid too, and they're doing their best to raise the kid, which I think is really good. Money doesn't seem to be a problem with them, so that issue isn't really addressed. And now I'm going to get to a very heavy spoiler in this film. The film kind of, after the main character wins this, or goes through this contest, they go ice skating, because there is a reference to this, to Florence Pugh's character being a champion ice skater, but eventually gave it up. And she's not going to go ice skating in, but it's sort of like, you can tell that's kind of this is the final memory of these characters of this wife. And the next time you see, and the way they decide to do this shot is they just do several rooms of an empty house, and then the father comes home with the daughter and now their dog, and you can tell that the wife has passed off, or that Florence Pugh's character has passed off screen. I actually prefer the fact that they didn't show it. This is one of those films that could have drawn this dramatic moment out. I'm very glad it didn't. Watch this film. It is very good. This is Mark Rollins from the Geek Church signing off.